So I've set the GPS and we are good to go. 3 hours and Dunedin is not too far away.
This is going to be fun. Getting to the gallery, the beaches, have a good look at the harbour. Can't wait.
Just promise me, no tourist stuff this time, okay?
Of course, it's just going to be history and culture all the way.
We are over professional.
But it's so big!
Time to slow it down a little. Just up the pathway, past over flowers and garden beds, you find an exquisite display down here at Lanark Castle. Just a short drive from the city centre, down at the Octagon, we make our way back into the city, where, for the most part, it's under construction at the moment, connected back to the central Octagon, where we find ourselves today at the Dunedin Art Gallery for a lesson in Arthur Streeton. Let's have a look in.
So it's just through this way? Thanks for that. Okay, we're in the registration area of the gallery and we've been invited in to have a look at some of the Streetons. I first noticed them on an earlier visit in 2018. Arthur Streeton is seen as the preeminent landscape painter of Australia, even though he did spend 18 years in England trying to make his name there, but I feel the light and the conditions weren't suited to Streeton's brushwork and high contrast style of work. So he did return just after the First World War, after leaving when he was in his late 20s, going to seek fame and fortune, but he did find it a hard slog in Europe. He had an exhibition in New York in the mid-20s, but that was poorly timed with the Depression coming on. And I think he really did peak in his early career with some magnificent major work, Fires on Lapstone Tunnel, Purple Noon's Transparent Might, which is probably one of the great Australian masterpiece landscape paintings. And his work really did inspire me. I remember seeing it firstly as a 21-year-old in Brisbane, in my hometown, not really even knowing of his work. I was shown through the gallery, the Queensland Art Gallery, went through the older style, then through the abstract and then into the impressionist area. And it really was Streeton's work that really did it. It literally gave me goosebumps and the hair was standing on the back of my neck. And I thought, that's a really good sign. Because as a young painter, you're not sure of your direction. And even the term impressionist was new to me as a 21-year-old to grapple with and to understand. But I think the Heidelberg School, which is the Australian school, and Streeton really did stand out, even though he was one of the younger painters, with Charles Conder, Tom Roberts and Frederick McCubbin being the senior artists, being approximately 10 years older than Conder and Streeton. So with his return, and I believe these both were painted with his return back to Australia, I think it was, even though he did come and do some exhibitions, 1907, I think there was one in Sydney called Streeton's Sydney Sunlight, which was hugely successful. And these exhibitions that he did in Australia were kind of funded his European lifestyle and his life back there. So he would come back, paint for an exhibition, and then return to England and his residence there and paint in Italy. He painted in Northern Africa as well. He was quite a prolific painter, starting at the age of about 14 or 15, painting pretty close right up until he died in 1943. Even doing a trip to Tasmania I believe, in the late 30s, about 1938. It was Streeton's first flight on an aeroplane. Would have been from Melbourne, possibly down into Hobart. And that really would have revolutionised his ability to travel, where it was steamship or sail that he would have been travelling from, say, Melbourne to Sydney. And he did even paint in North Queensland, in my home state. So then we come to some of his Australian landscapes in the 1920s. And I think the Adelaide painting from Mount Lofty really does show Streeton's expertise of painting on site, which is extremely difficult. I love the distance that he's got. It's quite interesting to see the amount of brushwork and the big brushwork, the heavy, thick paint in the sky, that he still did employ, even in the sky and in the background. But the little Cirrus Cove or Cirrus Cove painting is a real gem, actually. You can see the shadow on the left-hand side, how his delicate brushwork was able to really sort of encapsulate the sunlight, but also the movement, how the shadow is just tipping on the treetops. And I think the interesting thing was, Streeton was known as a square brush painter. He would use a very square brushed, most likely a long bristle brush, but he was known as the square brush painter. But if you have a close look at some of the brushwork in the Adelaide Mount Lofty painting, you can see that he did still employ quite a bit of smaller brushes to refine the brushwork in the foreground and in the mid-distance. He did quite a few quick, rapid-fire studies on site, and then he would either refine that, or in the case of Golden Summer, which is one of Streeton's very iconic paintings, and one's painting that has influenced a lot of artists, initially in Australia, but then with the advent of the internet, it's really spread his name worldwide. And I think Streeton is known as one of the Australian painters that everyone admires, and many painters try to outdo, but very few, if any, have ever been able to. Streeton did paint in watercolour. He was a marvellous sketcher as well. And even now, I still love the opportunity to get out and do some sketching. Managed to get a quick little sketch in. The light is leaving us fast, but I'm really pleased with how it came out. I always like to remember that drawing is more about looking at situations, trying to solve problems, and that's where one part of me sort of thought maybe a bit more elevation would have been great.
So let's go.
For our last stop today, we're going to be heading down to Tunnel Beach. It's just about 15 minutes drive from the central city of Dunedin, but it's worth the trip over, although it's a 30-minute walk down and a 30-minute hike back out again. But once you get down the tunnel, it's pretty damn spectacular. Photography. While we're down here at Tunnel Beach, I thought it a great opportunity to show you a little bit about photography. So step 1. Step back and zoom in. Have a look here, Dad's face. It completely transforms. All I'm doing is I'm stepping back and I'm zooming in. Apply that to any scene and the same effect. Step 2. Rule of thirds. So here's an image down from Queenstown at the River Rapids. What I've done here is I've taken the little red heart that's on the left-hand side, just put it on that third. That allows the eye somewhere to grasp onto, to land, and then expand out through the scene. Step 3. Focal point. So this is a great little image here, but it's missing something. Much better. So let's apply these 3 simple steps into the one image. Step back and zoom in. Here we go, pulling back into the scene. Rule of thirds. And there we go. And finally, focal point, which unfortunately we don't actually have anything to put in front. So let's grab a boat from somewhere else. And here's the final result. I'm really happy with how it's come out. After compositing the boat in from the separate scene, it's really tied everything together. But I think it's time for us to head back into town and wrap this thing up.
Well, that's a wrap here for Dunedin. I'm really pleased with our stay. We've really seen some marvellous places and beaches. But what about that weather there, Al?
It's been good to us, thankfully, for the most part. Like, we've been to Tunnel Beach, then we went to the train station just down the road, And it's been pretty great until today, until it started raining the final day. So thankfully we got all of that done beforehand.
Yeah, it looks like everything's worked out on cue. So now it's on to Christchurch. You just had that person walking in the back.
Sure. Bye-bye.